Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 63 in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we're going to ask a crazy question. Are the Palestinians of today like the Amalekites of 3,500 years ago? We're going to be looking in a passage from Deuteronomy 25 because Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has asked us to look at it. So what is this podcast for those of you who are new here? We've been walking through the book of Deuteronomy. It's a so-called ancient book, but we're discovering over and over again that it's applicable and authoritative and even practical for today. So we're doing it sequentially, doing a chapter at a time, and you're going to find us in Deuteronomy chapter 25 today. So speaking of practical and applicable, the Prime Minister of Israel on October 28th, 2023, which is 3 weeks after the massacre from October 7th of that year, the Palestinian attack on the civilians of Western Israel, Netanyahu gave a reference to the Bible. And here's what the headline read. Quote, Netanyahu's references to violent biblical passages raise alarm amongst critics. So the context was Netanyahu had dismissed calls for a pause in the hostilities. This is only 3 weeks into the crisis. So he dismisses calls for a pause in the hostilities from much of the international community unless it meant unconditional return of the captives. And then I'm going to quote now from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on October 28th. And he says, quote, Israel will not agree to the cessation of hostilities with Hamas after the horrific attacks of October 7th, period. Calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas. Then he said this, you must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible. Now, this confused everybody in the media. They thought it referred to a passage in 1 Samuel. And later, the Prime Minister's office called the reporters and said, no, this specifically refers to a passage in Deuteronomy. And both stories call for the Israelites to completely annihilate their attackers. So in the book of Deuteronomy, now Benjamin Netanyahu's office is calling the reporters, and he's quoting this text from Deuteronomy chapter 25, which reads, blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. So this article was all confused, and it said, how should the world interpret this quote from the Prime Minister and this allusion to the Hebrew Bible when discussing their country's war with Hamas? One of the commentators said his public statements have raised alarm among the critics. He's referred to these violent passages in the Bible to justify Israel's devastating response. So, full stop here now. You mean to tell me that a significant world leader is quoting the Bible and the very chapter that we are on as a justification for a military and cultural response to Hamas? And specifically, Netanyahu is quoting Deuteronomy chapter 25 to give understanding, perhaps to justify the extent of the response that's happening as we speak here today. So, to his credit, this is about 600 days later, as I said here today, and that quote from 600 days ago still gives understanding of what is happening in the news headlines today. So let me read the actual quote from Deuteronomy chapter 17. That says, this is Moses now, remember what Amalek did to you on the way out. Let me start over. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt, how he attacked you on the way when you were faint and weary, and cut off your tail, those who were lagging behind you, and he did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies around you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You shall not forget. Now that's retelling the story from a passage in Exodus chapter 17. So you mean to tell me that the activities and interactions of Israel with the group of people called the Amalekites and their king Amalek informs and animates their activities 3,500 years later. That is absolutely what I'm telling you. In fact, that's what Netanyahu tells you, that he is referencing the same response of Israel. He's saying we should be responding like the people did in 1446 BC because of the offense is similar. And the people should never forget this. And the people of Israel should never forget this. Today, the people of Israel should treat Hamas like that of the Amalekites. Specifically, blot out their memory. Blot out the memory of the Amalekites and blot out the memory of the Palestinians who have done a similarly horrible thing. So, here's the big point. If you wish for understanding today in this situation, in our newspapers today, go to the situation in 1446 BC. So we are going to respond in the same way. That's what Netanyahu is telling the world. So let's talk about the interpretation here now, and whether he's theologically correct in applying the principles of the specific example from Deuteronomy to this current example of Hamas. So we found many appropriate applications of the truths of Deuteronomy, and the question is whether Netanyahu is correct in applying this passage. So let's say someone cut me off in traffic, and I quote and apply this passage to the vengeance that I claim against the person, that person should be blotted out. Well, you'd all say, hey, wait a minute, take a time out. That's inappropriate, overstated, and misapplied. But what it does tell us is this. Today, know your Bible, know your history. Israel, to her great credit, and Netanyahu, to his great credit, has not forgotten something that God told them 3,500 years ago, and specifically said, don't forget this. So he's done that. All right, so here's a major point for today. Deuteronomy is applicable. It's practical. You have to understand Deuteronomy to understand our world today. You have to understand Deuteronomy to understand Israel today. You must understand it. To understand our world, you've got to understand Deuteronomy. With that in mind, I'll see you tomorrow.